In this video, we are going to be talking about the concept of comparative advantage, comparative and absolute advantage, absolute advantage. All right, so all this is saying is that countries are good and bad at certain things, and what we want to do is try to figure out, well, what this is going to enable us to do is to answer the question of why nations trade with each other. And this has a lot to do with production possibilities, and so that's how it ties into that. And so, just real quick, let's just look at some definitions of the two. So, absolute advantage, this is one we want to look at first. Absolute advantage simply says if you're given two products, X and Y, well, let me back that up. Let's say that we're looking at two different countries. It could be country X and country Y, but let's say we're looking at the U.S. and China. Let's say that the U.S. can produce 1,000 cars and China can produce 800 cars, then you would say that the U.S. has an absolute advantage in the production of cars. It's simply who can produce the most with the given resources that they have. All right. Now we can either look at it as a measure of output, like how many cars can we produce in a day, or we could look at it as a measure of input, say, with how many hours does it take to produce two cars or one car. And so if that were the case, if we said that this is the number of hours to produce, got some pen issues, if this is the number of hours to produce, who would you say can do it better? In this case, you'd say that China can do it because they have 800 hours. It only takes them 800 hours, whereas in the U.S. it takes 1,000. But that's called the input method. But we're going to primarily focus here today on the output method. And so the numbers that you see are going to be how much we can produce with what we have. All right, and so it might be 1,000 cars or 500 whatever. So anyway, so when we talk about absolute advantage, absolute advantage is again simply who can produce more, who's better at it, given their resources. Now, comparative advantage, this is where you definitely want to write the definition down. It is determining who has the lowest opportunity cost in the production of a good. In the production of a good. Okay? And so, like in the U.S., we don't produce everything that we consume in the U.S. We trade with other countries. And so, could we produce all the stuff that we like to consume? And the answer is yes. We have the technical ability, we have the resources to do it, but we don't. And so we want to answer, why do we produce what we produce, and why do other countries produce what they produce, and why, in the end, we're all better off because of that trade. All right? This is a lesson on why generally trade makes people's lives better. All right, so let's look at an example, and let's say that we've got the United States, and let's say we've got China. All right, and they can produce, we're going to say they can produce two things. One is going to be desks, and, oh, not chairs, I want cars. Oops. So they're producing desks and cars, and so let's say that the U.S. can produce 20 desks, given all of its resources, or they can produce 4 cars. So if we're producing desks, we can't do any cars. If we're producing cars, we can't do any desks. This is a simplified, shortened version of the production possibilities frontier, the schedule that we made. So if we were to do this over here, we'd have desks and cars, and so 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 down here, and then that'd be 20. So all we're doing is saying, if given all the resources to produce desks, we can do 20, or we can do 4 cars. So let me erase this real quick. All right, so in China, they can produce both of these things. They can produce either desks or cars. And so let's say that China can produce 30 desks, or they can produce 15 cars. All right. So the question now is, who should produce what? All right, and what we want to do is to figure out who has to give up the least in terms of the other product in order to determine who should produce what. Uh, just like if I said, you can produce, one pair of shoes, and I can produce, or 10 computers, and I can produce one pair of shoes or 5 computers, then I should be the one producing the shoes because we're only losing 5 computers if I do it, whereas if you do the shoes, then we're losing 10. All right, and so the opportunity cost for you to produce is much higher than it is for me, and so what we want to figure out is what is the opportunity cost of each country in terms of when they produce one desk, how many cars are they giving up, and when they produce one car, how many desks are they giving up, because that's the opportunity cost. So since we're doing, this is output, let's say output per day, and these can be in the thousands or whatever you want, doesn't really matter. So let's say that for every one desk the US produces, how much time, think about the time that it would take. And so for every one desk, how many cars could they have produced if they had done cars instead? And so to make this calculation, all you do is take the 4 and put it on top of the 20. And so what this is saying is that for every one desk that's produced, we could have produced 1/5 of a car. All right, so the time that it takes to produce one desk, it cost us 1/5 of a car. All right, how about for China? How many cars does it cost them to produce one desk? We take the 15 from over here and put it on top. And so for every one desk, they could have produced half of a car. And so who has the lower opportunity cost here? And so right now you would say the US, because they're only giving up 1/5 of a car when they produce, whereas China would be giving up half of a car. And this works in the other direction. What's the cost when the US produces one car? What's the cost of in terms of desks? And so we take the 20 and put it on top. All right. And so for every car that we make, we could have produced 5 desks in that time. And so the opportunity cost for producing one car is 5 desks, whereas the opportunity cost over here of producing one car is only 2 desks. So they don't have to give up a whole lot in China. And so again, it's the lowest opportunity cost. Whoever has the lowest opportunity cost is the person that should be producing the product. And so in this scenario, we would look at it and say, given these different numbers, that the US has a comparative advantage in the production of desks, and China has a comparative advantage in the production of cars. All right, and so that's who should produce the different things. The U.S. should be producing desks, so we get 20 desks, and China should be producing cars, so we get the 15 cars. Now, a couple other things. We want to figure out something called, whoa, that's yellow. We want to figure out something called the terms of trade. All right, and so let's say take the price of cars. All right, how much is the price of a car? So we know that China is going to produce cars because they have the comparative advantage. They have a lower opportunity cost. And so for every one car that China produces, how many desks are they going to want in exchange? And so when you look at this, in the time it takes them to produce one car, they could get 2 desks. So what if they could trade one car and get 3 desks? Would they be happy about that? And you should answer yes, because if they can take the time that it takes them to produce one car or 2 desks, they can produce the one car and get 3 desks. Or what if they could trade one car for 4 desks, or 5, or 6, or 7? Anything over 2. Okay, so one car is at least 2 desks. All right, China would be happy with, this is going to make China happy. All right. Anything over 2 desks, they would be happy. How about the U.S.? All right. How many desks do they want to give up in order to buy a car? Well, we know that in the time it takes them, in the time that they can produce one car, they can produce 5 desks because that's their opportunity cost. And so what if they could trade 4 desks? Would they be happy if they could trade 4 desks and get a car? Would the U.S. be happy? And so looking at this, we know that in the time it takes them to produce one car, they could have produced 5 desks. So if they can say, you know what, China, we'll produce 5 desks, we'll give you 4 of them, and you give us a car, and so they actually are left with an extra desk because they were able to negotiate the terms of trade. And so the U.S. would be willing to trade anything less than 5 desks. And so when we talk about the terms of trade, it'll be one car for somewhere between 2 to 5 desks. Would China be happy with one car and 3 desks? One car being 3 desks? Well, yes, because in time it takes them to do one car, they could have done 2, but instead they're going to get 3. They'd be really happy with 5 because then they're making even more money. But the U.S., would they be happy with, let's see, giving 3 desks for one car? And the answer is yes, because it takes them 5 desks. 5 desks equals one car, and so if they produce the desks, then they would be giving up less. All right. So this is what the terms of trade is. So you have to figure out. So one car equals 2 to 5 desks. Somewhere between there. Both countries would be happy if the terms of trade were one car to anywhere between 2 and 5. Now, why is this important? Why does this matter? So let's draw a graph. It's econ. Gotta love graphs. All right. And let's say that this is U.S. PPC. All right. And we're going to put cars here, and we'll put desks down here. All right. And so we can produce, say, 5, 10, 15, or 20. All right. And then we can produce 5 cars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars. 6, 7, 8. And you'll see why I made it up to 8 here in just a second. 2, 1. All right. So if we go back to this other data, we know that we can either produce 5 cars and no desks, or 20 cars and, or 20 desks and no cars, or some combination of the two. This is not the best line. Let me erase that real quick. Just a sec. I want to pass kind of through there. So let's do a line. Something like that. Okay? So this is our current production possibilities, and you can also say that this is our current consumption possibilities. So if we didn't trade, this is our CPC is consumption possibilities. So these are all the different combination of goods that we could consume, because since we're not trading, this is all we got. And so in this case, we can do 5 cars, no desks, 20 desks, no cars, or we can do 3 cars and 10 desks. All right. So this is our consumption possibilities. Okay. So how will trade make us better off? And that's the question. And so over here we decided that the U.S. should be producing desks and China should be producing cars. And let's say that they came to an agreement that the U.S. got the better of the deal. So one car costs 2.5 desks. Okay? So what if, since the U.S. is specializing in desks, if we decide not to trade, then this is all we're going to have. We're going to have 20 desks, and we're not going to be able to drive any cars. All right? What if the U.S. said, let's produce 10, let's produce 20. Produce 20, we're going to specialize, but then we're going to sell 10 to China. All right, and in exchange for those 10, we're going to get cars. And so how many cars can we get for 10 desks? And so just 2.5 goes into 10. So we're going to be able to get 4 cars here. And so by producing 20, so our consumption possibilities, okay, so we produced 20, we sold 10 of them, so we sold these first 10, and in exchange for those 10, we got 4 cars. All right, hopefully you saw what just happened. Before trading, our consumption possibility was, if we did 10 desks, we could only produce 3 cars. That's all we could consume. When we traded, we have we produced 20, we sold 10 of them, and we got 4 cars in exchange. All right, and so what just happened to our consumption possibility? Our consumption just went up. We can consume more than we could produce before we traded. How about if we sold all the desks, sold all 20 desks? How many cars would we have? So sell 20 desks. How many cars do we get in exchange for that? We get 8 cars in exchange. Okay, and so if we wanted, we could be up there. Let's get this. How about this color? So if we wanted, we could have 8 cars. By specializing in doing 20 desks, we can trade China for the cars. And so if we want, we could do 8 cars and no desks at all. Or we could do 10 desks, produce 20, sell 10, and get 4 cars. And so let's see if this line will come anywhere close to fitting. So there, that's not bad. All right, so this new line would be considered the improvement because of trade. All right, this is increased consumption due to trade. And so the green line is no trade. The pink line is trade. And so if you're living in this country, which one is better? And obviously the pink line is better. All right. You'll often hear people say, "Oh, trading is bad. It sends jobs overseas," and there is that. Okay, people do lose their jobs because of trade, but it also helps create jobs as well. But when we talk about cutting off trade with countries because we want to promote jobs at home, I heard an economist on a podcast talking about it. And if trade restrictions make sense overseas, then wouldn't the same trade restrictions make sense between, say, South Carolina and Georgia, or California and Oregon? That we're not going to allow trade between those 2 states because we want to promote trade. We want to promote growth within our own state, or even why not cities? Here in Georgia, let's say Augusta can't trade with Atlanta. Why is that? Is that a good idea? And the answer should be obviously no, because we can't produce it all here. Or let's just say let's not trade at all and just produce your own stuff. The greatest line coming out of the podcast that I was talking about, he said something like self-reliance is the road to poverty. And this was Russ Roberts, a podcast he does. I think it was self-reliance, some of that, but doing your own thing and not trading with anybody is the road to poverty, because if you tried to do everything yourself, you would be extremely poor. All of your time would be going to just try to find food, but instead you go to school, you get a job, and you go out and make money, and then you trade. And so this works well for cities to trade. It works well. The more we trade, the better off we become. It would be better if this consumption possibilities curve was bigger and bigger and bigger. And so anyway, that's it for this one. But the moral of the story, let's go review this real quick. We have absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Absolute simply says that a country can produce more with the resources that they have. Comparative advantage says the country that has the lowest opportunity cost is the country that should produce the product. And so here we went down and we looked at the U.S. and China in the production of desks and cars. We had to figure out for every desk the U.S. produces, how many cars do they give up. And so we take this 4 and put it on top, so we know that for every 1 desk they produce, they could have produced 1/5 of a car in that time. So we worked all that math. So we figured out that the U.S. has the lower opportunity cost because it only costs them 1/5 of a car when they're producing desks versus 1/2 of a car. And it works in the reverse direction here. China only has to give up 2 desks when they produce 1 car, whereas the U.S. would have to give up 5 desks, which is a lot. And so the terms of trade is if China decides to produce cars, how many desks are they willing to take? And so anything over 2, all right, so it's going to be anything in between these 2 numbers. All right, that's the short of it. So the U.S. would be happy giving anything less than 5 cars for anything less than 5 desks per car. China would be willing to accept anything greater than 2 desks per car, so it's going to be somewhere in the middle there. All right, and so then when we pulled it over here onto the graph, we saw that here's our current consumption possibilities without trade. Through trading, we're able to get more by specializing, and specializing is you get good at one thing, and that's what you do. So by specializing, we were able to take all of our product. We sold 10, and that increased our consumption possibility, or we could sell all 20, and that increased our consumption possibility of cars even more. So through trade, we all become better off. And this graph would work if we did China on another graph. It would look the same except in reverse. Okay, so these are the benefits of trade. All righty, and that's it for this one.